This is Living Power with Dan Hurst.
Point number 2, change revitalizes ministry. Change revitalizes ministry. John chapter 10, verse 40. Look at this. He went away again across the Jordan to the place where John had been baptizing at first, and there he remained. Now, when you first look at this, it looks like Jesus just said, okay, I can't handle this anymore, and he got away. I'm going to go hide somewhere. Actually, what happened was Jesus went to an area that's called Perea. It's on the east side of Jordan. You can see that on the map here. Jesus has been in Jerusalem. He goes east and he crosses the Jordan back over into this area of Perea. And it was an area where he would be relatively safe from arrest. And it was there that he found a better reception. It says many believed on him. Perea was the domain of Herod Antipas, depending on what part of the country you're from. And Herod, they had weird names back then. Have you figured that out? I know when we get to heaven, they're going to look at us and go, man, we wish we had your name. I'm talking about you. Anyway, so he moves over to this area east of the Jordan, and he's in this area where the rulers in Jerusalem had no authority. And so because they had no authority, Jesus would be safe from that kind of harassment, at least temporarily. And it's here in this area in Perea where Jesus seems to develop somewhat of a base or a place for retreat where he and or his disciples could go if they need it. Now, a change is like a retreat. Not a retreat like backing down retreat, but rather a retreat where you go to review and to refocus and to restore. We all need that in our lives. And when you're going through some really critical times in your lives and it's time to shift gears, it's time to make a change, you need what we are about to take a look at. You need that time in your life where you do these 3 things in your life. You review, you refocus, and you restore. You need that in your life, particularly when the pressure's on. So let's take a look at this. A change is a time to review your ministry. When you realize it's time to shift gears in your life, you need to take this time where you begin to review your ministry. Remember the story of Jonah? It was during a time of change that he and the Lord had a little discussion about Jonah's ministry. It happened in the belly of a big fish. And Jonah replied with a fresh understanding of what his life and calling was really all about. This happened in the belly of the fish. Talk about change. Jonah 2:7, when my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you in your holy temple. What? In the worst of circumstances, I mean, the guy is covered with stuff in the belly of a fish. Couldn't have smelled too good. And he called it a holy temple. Why? Because he met God. He met God at that point. In that crisis, at that point, there was this face-to-face, if you will, confrontation with the Lord. Not that he saw him, but he met him there. No question about it. Listen, you can meet God in the middle of the worst part of your crisis. You can meet God in the middle of the worst part of your crisis. I can tell you from personal experience that this is one of the most painful and agonizing moments in life when you are meeting God in the midst of that crisis. When Marcia and I left a successful ministry in Florida and moved back here because we thought God was leading us to a different kind of ministry, and He was, we suddenly found ourselves in a crisis situation. I had been serving as associate pastor in this church for a number of years, and it was a great ministry. It was everything was going well. We had a new house, you know. We had our children. They were very young. They were just, you know, everything was going well. And I just felt like God was really impressing me that I needed to be working with churches at risk. That's what I felt. That's what I felt God was leading me to do. And I knew that if I was going to work with churches at risk or churches that were in trouble, that they would not be able to support me. So I needed to have a job where I could support myself so I could work with such churches. And my degree was in broadcast journalism, and so I thought, well, I had several years' experience. I worked my way through a number of years of college in radio, and so I thought, this is what I'll do. And so we moved up here because Marcia's parents were up here, and we thought, this is where we'll establish, this will become the base for this ministry. And so I took a job in radio and started developing a connection with churches, working with churches that were problem. Immediately went to work in a little church here in Kansas City that was at risk. And all of a sudden, the props were knocked out. And I lost my job. And when I lost my job, eventually I couldn't find a job, and everything fell apart. And we were in this crisis situation, no job, which meant there was no way to support what we thought was God's calling on our lives, which was to work with these churches. And it was this horrible situation that we could not define, couldn't get a hold of. We were basically the victim of somebody's misrepresentation and downright lies of what they would do and what they expected and what they wanted. And we felt like it was like we had been abandoned. Ever feel that way? That you had been abandoned or abandoned by God? But I want you to see something. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 4, there's a wonderful promise. He who calls you is faithful. He will surely do it. He who calls you is faithful. He will surely do it. What that verse clearly says is that it's not your job to do God's job. He will surely do it, not you. It's not your job to do God's job. It's your job to be part of God's toolbox. And sometimes we think that what we are doing and what we're supposed to be doing is the most important thing in the world, and it's all about what's happening to us, without looking at the really big picture and recognizing that God's the one that owns the toolbox and is building the house. So change is a time to review your ministry. What is it that God really wants to accomplish in and through your life? You need to be looking at the issues and the problems and everything and trying to understand what it is that you're supposed to do there too. But you definitely need to be looking at the calling that God has on your ministry, on you. What is it that God wants out of your life? What is it that He wants to accomplish in and through your life?
On behalf of Dan Hurst and the Open Class, we want to thank you for watching. We hope it was a blessing.